Hi, I'm Rain Emery, and if you've been here for a while, you know the drill. I made another pattern with Simplicity. This is Simplicity 3189, and it is a fantasy pattern. It has a detached hood, a tabard, a blouse, and high-waisted pants. You can wear these items at fantasy balls, Ren fairs, other fantasy events, and honestly, every day. I'm probably going to wear these pants every day. So if there is any method that you'd prefer to do instead of what I tell you to do, please do it. This is your creative journey. This is your project. I encourage you to do so. All seams will be 5/8 of an inch unless otherwise stated. All right, let's get started. Here is Simplicity 3189, and if you flip it over onto the back, onto the top of this envelope here on this flap, you will take the measurements or the measurements of the person who will be wearing these up here and determine which size they will be wearing. Now down here you will see the suggested fabrics, the notions that you'll need, and the amounts of fabrics determined by your size. And then down here is the finished garment measurements. Here I have number 1 and number 2, which is the front and back of the blouse. We're going to start out with the blouse. I've marked where all the dots are, and I've also added the notches. I just clipped into the fabric a little bit, and we are going to first work on the darts. So with the dots that I have made, I'm going to match them up and pin it up to that dot. Something that I do like to do beforehand usually is press the line so it's all nice and smooth before you actually sew it. Stitch from the raw edge here, the wider part of the dart, make a tiny little triangle all the way down here, tapering down until there's no seam allowance left here at the dot. And then we are not going to backstitch. Leave a little bit of thread and then double knot it. Okay, so it might be hard to tell here, but we have sewn 2 darts, one right here and one right here, of the dart that is right here on this pattern. I will flip it around so you can see. I tapered it to make it into a little skinny triangle, and then I knotted it right here, leaving a little bit of a tail. That way it doesn't bunch up right here. After I did that, I pressed it down. Now we're going to attach these shoulders to the back piece, which is number 2. This here is the back bodice, and now right sides together, match the front to the back on the shoulder seams to match the notches, pin it, stitch it along the shoulder line. Do that on both of them. The shoulder seams now have been sewn. So now, after sewing the shoulder seams, we are going to create a flat filled seam. I press this seam towards the back, and then I'm going to take the seam allowance that's under it and trim it to about 1/8 of an inch. After we've trimmed, fold the now longer side 1/4 of an inch towards that seam, and then fold it again, press that. So it'll look like that, and then you're going to stitch along this edge right here. This is what it looks like on the outside, and this is what it looks like on the inside. Now flip it back over, right sides together, and start pinning down each side all the way down and end the pinning at the dot. We are not going to sew all the way down. We are going to start sewing from the top here all the way down to that dot, and then we are going to backstitch. Now that the side seams of the blouse are sewn until that dot, let me show you what to do next. Press those seams open, continue to press them open 5/8 of an inch after that large dot. And then after we do that, I'll show you on this side because I've already done it. We're going to do something similar to how we finished the shoulders. Take this raw edge and press it in towards that seam line right there, about 1/4 of an inch. Press it down, all the way down to the bottom here as well. Stitch along the pressed edge all the way down. So the raw edge will be encased. Stitch one extra line, a little tiny line, right at the dot here across so it stabilizes this opening right here. Like that. Set aside the front and back blouse while we pull out our facings. Got the front facing and the back facing, and I've already fused the inner facing to each of them. And now, right sides together, match up the shoulders, pin it, sew it, and then after that, you'll press it open, and you can finish these seams however you'd like. I think I'm just going to use pinking shears, and I'll see you in a minute. So I've got all this ready to go, and I did use pinking shears to finish off the shoulder seams, and then I just serged around the edges to finish that. You can finish it however you'd want to. If you want to use pinking shears for that one, if you want to do a rolled hem for it, you can. I'm going to pull this out for reference, and then I'm also going to pull out the main body of the blouse again, so the front and back of it, and we're going to focus on the neckline here. So now we are going to flip this. So wrong side is up and then right side is up for the main body of the blouse. Match up center back, center front at the point and the seams, and then we're going to pin it all the way around. I had to remark it because the interfacing was covering it, but I transferred the dots from this pattern, so this one, and this one, over onto the wrong side of this, and I matched it to the point down here. So there is a visible stitching line. All the way around here will be 5/8 of an inch, and then coming down here will be this little pizza piece. So now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch all the way around over here, and I'll show you how to clip it after we're done. All right, I'm going to put my needle in at that dot. I'm going to pivot, go all the way down to that other point. If you want to add a couple extra stitches here, please do, because this will be an area of tension. Going back around. Hi. Hi. Now that we have sewn around the neckline and made our little pizza right here, clip it and trim it. So this is just how I do it. You can do it however you want. I like to clip the corners. You can trim the neckline or just clip the curves like this. Very carefully clip down to that point, not through though. I'm gonna clip to that point. And now you can flip it inside out. And if this point gives you a little bit of trouble, you can kind of massage it. This is what I learned in fashion design school. And then it should relax a little bit. And if it doesn't relax enough, you can go ahead and go in and clip it just a tiny bit more. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. So now I'm gonna take this again to the sewing machine, and on the facing, I am going to understitch on the edge of that seam there about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch away. That just helps it so the facing pushes inwards instead of like wanting to flap out like it wants to right now. Here is one side of the pizza. Here is the front point, and this is the facing. And I'm just gonna go down as far as I can and making sure that the seam allowance, the raw edge, is facing the facing. Stitch pretty close to that seam line until we can go no further. And there's a point here, so I'm gonna need to end right there. Around the neckline as well, just as far as we can go. I pressed it so it looks all nice and crisp. This is what it looks like on the inside. And just to secure the facing from flying up, even though we have added the understitching, I tacked it down at the center front, the center back right here, and at the shoulder seams. So you can do this with a hand needle and do a couple hand stitches to make it more invisible. Now it is time to work on the sleeve for the blouse. So we have patterns 5 and 6 here. And the first step that we're gonna do is from these 2 dots here, these 2 dots up here, according to your size, and these 2 dots here, you are going to add gathering stitches. I add 2, so I added one 1/4 of an inch away from the raw edge and 1/2 of an inch away from the raw edge. And I've already done that here, so I can show you what to do next. Gather the top of number 6 here so we can fit it to the bottom of number 5. With right sides together, you're going to take pattern 5, and you're going to take this gathered portion and flip it up like this, right sides together, and start pinning it down and matching the notch that is on this pattern and this pattern. Make sure to line it up so that the back is matched with the back. So the back here is the double notched side, and the back on the lower sleeve is the part with the curve at the bottom. Now distribute the gathers so that it's all even. Now we are going to take it to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch from this edge here all the way down to the other edge. And then you can finish the seam however you'd like. I'm probably just going to serge it. After you're done with that, you're going to flip up the seam like this and press it like that. That has been finished and pressed up. Flip it onto the other side, and on the outside to stitch 1/4 inch away from the seam on this side so the seam will stay in place. And that's what it looks like. All right, that's all good to go. Now the next step is right sides together, match up these two sides and start pinning. But as according to this pattern here, match up these two dots down here and stop pinning at that point. We're going to do something similar to how we did the sides of the blouse. So I've already got this one pinned. So you will start up here and then you will stitch all the way down and then back stitch at that dot. And then after you've done that, you will finish it the exact same way that we finished the side seams of the blouse. These seams have been finished and this is what it looks like on the outside. We still have that opening right here and we're going to set this aside for just a moment while we work on pattern number 7, which is the cuff. I've already gone ahead and fused the interfacing to them, and I also, on the unnotched side, so not this side, but this side, I have pressed up 5/8 inch, and then you are going to trim this down to about 3/8 inch. Okay, now once we have that done, start gathering the bottom of the sleeve, and then we are going to attach it to this side of the cuff. I'm going to explain it more detailed on how you're going to attach it. This is where we are going to match the notches right there, and then this small dot is going to match up with this small dot, but that small dot is right here, right on the pressed edge, so that's where it is for me. So we will be overlapping it. The buttonholes will be towards the back and the button placements will be towards the front. So this is what it looks like when it is all pinned. As you can see, there is an overlap right here. There is a longer overlap right here. And then on the back here, there is a shorter overlap right there. So you're just gonna go ahead and stitch that down. Okay, we've got that sewn. You are going to turn the seam towards the cuff, and what I'm going to do, just to get rid of some bulk, is at a 45-degree angle, trim down the gathered fabric. That helps to reduce bulk. So next part you're going to do is you're going to fold, this is on both sides of the cuff, you're going to fold this part up and make sure the press side is still folded, and you're going to fold it in half and pin it like that. And then you're going to stitch it 5/8 inch, so that'll just make it flush with the sleeve opening right here. But on the other side, fold it in half and pin it. You are also going to stitch this 5/8 inch right here, so there will be an overlap for the button and the buttonhole. Once you've done that, it'll look something like this. And then you can trim this down, or you could just flip it as it is. And on the other side as well, like that. And I'm going to turn it inside out so you can see this part a little bit better. This is the inside of the sleeve. And now you're going to take this to the iron and you are going to press it in half all the way around so that it is nice and crisp. And then you're going to pin it like that, and then slip stitch the inside of the cuff closed with a hand needle. Okay, now after we have pressed and slip stitched the inside here, we are going to flip it to the outside, stitch close to the edge here as a top stitch. Okay, now we're ready to attach the sleeves to the main blouse. I've done it on one arm already. So we're going to turn it inside out, so we're seeing the facing, and then with the right side of this out, you're going to place it in, make sure that the single notch is going towards the front and the double notch is going towards the back of the blouse. First, pin where the side seam is and match it up with the side seam of the sleeve right there. And then if you haven't gathered the top of the sleeve yet already, go ahead and do that. And then you're going to match the center dot. So So the center dot right here with the shoulder seam, I've got a pin here to mark where that is. And then you should have 2 extra dots on here on where you gathered, and you are going to match those dots with the dots that you marked onto the blouse. And then you're going to match the notches, pin all the way around, and gather up the head of the sleeve to fit. And now once you've got that pinned, you are going to sew all the way around the armhole. So when you're done, it'll look like this. And then you can finish the raw edge however you'd like. Again, I'm just going to serge it because I have that option. Okay, so those sleeves are sewn in and they are finished. So I'm going to flip it back right side out just to check that it looks good to go. To finish the bottom of the blouse, I did a 5/8 inch rolled hem. So what I did is I just added a 5/8 inch basting stitch to the bottom of it, and then I'm going to press up on that line towards the wrong side, and I'm going to press that raw edge in on to that pressed edge, so it'll just make a nice casing for it. And then I'm just going to stitch close to this edge right here. Now we're going to focus on the blouse cuff buttonholes and buttons. So I've marked where the buttons will go, and I've also marked where the buttonholes will go. So I have the buttonhole option on my sewing machine, so I'm just going to use that. To open the buttonholes, what I like to do is I like to put a pin at the very end, one on each for now, just so you don't go ripping through the other side. So I like to take a seam ripper, start by poking a hole on the other end like that, and usually you could just rip right through, but since this one isn't very sharp, I'm going to use my little clipping scissors, cut right to the other end, but not through it. This pin will help stop it, so it'll look like that. And we are all done with the shirt. Yay, good job. It should look something like this when you're all done. Are you sitting on the pattern? You are, huh? Well, you're so cute, you can get away with it. To begin with the pants, we have patterns 8 and 11 here, and we're just going to focus on 8, which is the front mark. What your size is, so I just clipped into it. So I'll find number 12 and number 12, and you'll bring the solid line over to the broken line like that, and do the same for the other side. And then you will baste across the top right here, and then you'll baste along the edge of the pleats up here just for like a couple inches, and then you will press it. So then when it starts out looking like this, then it'll end up looking like this. Now that the pleats are in, basted, and pressed at the top here, we are going to take out pattern number 9, which is the pocket facing, and we're going to find one that will go right sides together on this. Place the pocket facing right side together on the side here of the front pant, and it'll match up pretty well. So you are going to pin this right here, and then sew from the top here all the way down to the other edge. Flip it around with the seam towards the pocket facing, and that understitching right next to that seam line. So it'll end up looking like this, and then you'll take it to the iron, and then you're going to press it. So on the inside, it looks like this. Now pull out pattern piece number 10, which is the side, front, and pocket. And we are going to finish this pocket. I'm going to place it right sides together on the pocket facing like this. Pin from the top here all the way down this curve until here. We're not going to pin up here or down here. Stitch from the top here and all the way over this curve and end here. And then I'm going to finish the seams with a serger, but again, you can finish it however you'd like. That is now stitched and finished, so I serged around the edges. Now flip it. It should fall pretty evenly. This is the pocket facing that we sewed earlier right here. And so now on this edge down here and this edge up here where the pocket is still free, pin along these raw edges. We're going to pin up at the top as well. And then we're going to add a basting stitch at the top and bottom of where we just pinned to secure the pocket in place. Both front pockets are ready to go, and I'm just going to focus on one right now, one leg for now. So we're gonna pull out number 11, the back of the pants. Find the inner leg seam, which is a straight seam right below this curve right here. Match that up with the back leg, right sides together. Pin down the pant leg, and then we will stitch it down. Matching up the bottom and matching the notches. And now we're gonna sew down the inner seam of the leg, starting at the top here, all the way down. And then I'm going to finish it with serging again. You can finish it however you'd like, and then we're gonna press it towards the back. Okay, now we've sewn the inner seam right here, and we've pressed it towards the back, and I've also serged it, and now we're gonna top stitch it. So this will be on the other side, but I'll show you what it looks like here. We're gonna top stitch it on this seam, all the way down 1/4 of an inch away from the seam. So we're gonna flip it around, and then on the back side where the seam is pressed towards, top stitch away from the seam 1/4 of an inch all the way down. That is top stitched, and I also have done the other pair. Now we need to sew the crotch seam together, so we are going to place it right sides together, making sure that the front is matched up with the front, the back is matched up with the back. Match up the seam right here, pin that, pin all the way around in this U shape, matching the notches. Where are the notches? Oh, there you are. Stitch from the top here all the way down to the other side in that U shape, and then we're going to finish the seams. I'm going to use a serger, and then we press this towards the right and top stitch it away from the edge 1/4 of an inch, just like we did it for the seam here. Crotch seam has been sewn, so now we are going to add gathering stitches to the 2 sewn back pieces. So I have already done that here. I added 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 of an inch, and these are between the 2 dots that were on the pattern that you marked. Now we're going to sew the side seams, flip it so that the front center seam and the front back seam are close together. We are going to insert a zipper on the right side of the pants, and I know this sounds weird right now, but trust me on this one. You are going to pin down this side of the pants like this and sew this side down, not the other side quite yet. So this side has the pockets up on the right side, and when we flip it inside out, it'll then be on the left side. So we will be putting in the zipper on the right side. I know that sounds complicated, but just sew down the side of this pant leg that is here, and I'm showing it to you right now, and then serge it and press it towards the back. Woohoo, we got one pant leg sewn. So this pant leg is sewn, and this pant leg is still open so that we can add the zipper onto the side here. But this one's all good to go. So we are inserting a zipper onto the right. Don't forget that. I'm going to pull out the yoke now. I already fused it interfacing to the fabric, and this is the lining. After you fuse the interfacing to the fabric, you are going to stitch one side together. This is the back, this is the front, and you're going to sew the fabric layer on this side. With the lining layer, you're going to sew it on this side. I know, it's weird, but it'll make sense, I promise. And then you're going to press the seam open like that. Now we're going to pin the lower edge of our yoke to the top of our pants. So we're going to go ahead and match those notches up, match the center front up, and pin all along the front here. And then after we've done that, we are going to gather the back and pin the back of the yoke all the way around. Here is what it should look like, all pinned together. This is the front and this is the back. The back is gathered and the front is already pleated, so it should go in nicely. And now we're going to stitch all the way around this.
Who's that? Who's that?
Huzzah! That seam is now sewn, and I have also pressed it up towards the yoke. Here, I'm just trying to figure out how to show you. Like that. So I pressed up the raw edge up towards the yoke. Now you can trim it if you'd like, if that reduces the bulk and helps it lay flatter. And next we are going to add an edge stitch onto the yoke itself away from that seam about 1/8 of an inch. I also have serged down this edge right here. I sewed it down earlier just so I don't have to worry about it later. Now we're going to insert the zipper. Yay, everybody's favorite part. So I have a zipper here. I have pressed it down with a cool iron to get those coils laying a little bit flatter so we can stitch closer to them. And yours does not need to be as long as mine. I usually just get longer ones so I can cut them down to size if needed. We're gonna take the back side of this raw edge. So this is the back, this is the zipper, and this is facing up. And we are gonna take this zipper side and we're gonna flip it around, pin the zipper stopper at 3/4 of an inch from the top raw edge. And then we're gonna place it away from the side raw edge so that the coils line about right at 5/8 of an inch. Then you're gonna pin all the way down, maintaining that width away from the raw edge to however long you want the zipper to go. Okay, I think the zipper should be good about right there. Since I don't have an invisible zipper foot, I do have a normal zipper foot. I like to take it to the sewing machine and baste it down in the middle before sewing it close to the edge of the coils. That way it kind of stays in place. You can hand baste it if you'd like to. After that is sewn, take the other side of the zipper and we're going to flip that around as well. And then also place it 3/4 of an inch below and just do the same exact thing and just make sure that they line up properly, especially with this yoke seam right here. We're adding that basting stitch. And now we're going back in closer to those zipper coils. Now before attaching the other side to the other side of the pants, I'm going to zip it up. And then if you see here, you can now mark where that yoke lies. And then once you make that mark, you can unzip it and then line up that exact spot with the other yoke so the yoke seam lines match up afterwards. Now the moment of truth. Will it zip? Ooh. It will! Huzzah! Look at that! The zipper is inserted and I have pressed down the zipper seam right here. And now we have this entire open leg. So we're gonna close it, flip the pants inside out. Ooh, there we go. Since the zipper was a lot longer than I intended it to be, I added a zigzag stitch that is right over the zipper teeth to make it a zipper stop. Then I also added just like a little tab right here with fabric just to make sure that it doesn't bother me when I'm wearing it. So now we are going to place this right sides together and then we're going to start pinning it all the way down, matching up at the bottom of the pants. Okay, and once you've got all that pinned, we're going to take this to the sewing machine. This might be a little bit tricky. I'm going to zoom in. You're going to still use a zipper foot and you're going to start right where we left off with that zipper, maybe just a little bit above that, like 1/8 of an inch. And then you're going to stitch all the way down to the bottom of the pants. Press the seam open. Yeah, she's looking good. So that seam is all sewn together and pressed. Woohoo! And now we're going to finish the top yoke by grabbing our lining of the yoke, and I have pressed it up 5/8 of an inch all along the bottom. So I used a similar method before where I stitch 5/8 of an inch away from the raw edge where I need to fold up, and then I pressed up along that stitching line. That'll help with the curves here. And now we're going to trim it down to about 3/8 of an inch. There we go. And then we're going to pull out the pants again, and on the top raw edge, line up the lining with the top edge. Pull this seam back out and include it in this seam. Pin all the way around to the other side. All right, there we go. I have matched up the sides and I've also matched up the center front, center back, and this sewn side as well. Sew it all the way around. Ta-da! And just like magic, it is now sewn. And I've trimmed it down. I've trimmed off about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. You can do a little bit more. Take this opening right here on either side where the zipper lays and Flip it out so that the zipper teeth are back out. Match up these edges, these raw edges, right sides together. Match it up to this yoke line right here on the bottom folded part of the lining. Start pinning. And once you have that pinned, so from the top to the bottom of the yoke lining, and you are going to sew that 1/2 inch with a zipper foot. Repeat that on the other side. Clip those corners, push that corner out on each side, and then we are going to understitch on this lining across the top edge all the way around. Hi Bart! Hi sleepy boy, what's up?
He's a good boy.
You are very close to the camera, huh? The seam is going towards the lining, so we're stitching on top of that seam and the lining. So now that the yoke is pretty much almost finished, we pressed at the top here so it's nice and crisp. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze, hold on. Never mind. It decided to take a vacation elsewhere. Okay, to finish this yoke, place down this folded edge onto the wrong side of the pants, wherever it lines up, and you're going to pin it all the way around so it looks something like this. Very nice, very neat. Just slip stitch it all the way around and close it up. Also, you can add a hook and an eye on the top of the pants here. Now we're going to finish the bottom of the pants, the hem of the pants, and we're going to do an elastic casing. Press up 1 1/8 inch. Press this raw edge in towards that fold, 1/4 inch. Stitch right along this edge, and then you will leave an opening so we can insert the elastic. So that is what I have done here. I have pressed it and stitched it down along this folded edge, and I left about an inch and a half opening right here. Pull out pattern number 14, which is the elastic, and I have this buttonhole elastic, which is just what I had. This is 3/4 inch elastic, so yours will most likely not have holes in it. Take a safety pin, pin that, start feeding it through that channel all the way around. Now when the elastic gets close to being encased all the way, I'm just going to pin it so it doesn't go in and we won't have to redo everything. Now that the elastic is out on the other side, lay them over each other and then pin it. So before we stitch this down, make sure that this fits you or the person who's going to wear this, and if you need to adjust it, you can. So after you have made sure, you can stitch it in a square around where it is overlapped, and then you'll slip it back in, and then you will stretch it and stitch the opening closed so the elastic is fully encased. There you go, you have a lovely pair of poofy pants that you can wear at the Ren Fair or for any photo shoots or on a daily basis. And when somebody compliments you and says, wow, you have really nice poofy pants, you could say, thank you, I made them, and guess what? They have pockets! This is when you know it's time for a break. Now moving on to the tabard, we have pattern numbers 15, 16, 17, and 18. I have marked all of the dots and I have clipped all the notches. Let's start with stay stitching. Okay, I've got the front and back tabard here, and you can reference this on the pattern instruction, but this is where we are going to stay stitch. So it's just from right here down to the notch, and then up here down to the other notch. And I have also already fused interfacing to the fabric layers, and I've also cut out lining layers, but we are not going to be using that right now. Now we'll be sewing side front to front and side back to back. Right sides together, match it up with the notches, and if you need to clip in a little bit just for ease of pinning, you are welcome to do that. Sew down each of these seams. And then once you have those all sewn, go ahead and press the seams open like this and like this. And next we're going to add the trim, yay! To add the trim, we first need to mark where the trim will go. This line along where the grommets are on the center front and on the bottom here, on the bottom of the side front, on the bottom of the side back, and on the bottom and in the center back of the back. I have already marked that. Which, fun fact, if you have a dried up white soap bar, I think you can do like other colors too. You can use that as a chalk substitute and it comes off pretty easily. Oh, there it goes. This is a trim I'm going to be using. It is sparkly, it is pretty, I love it. Here is a placement line and I'm going to start at the very top. I'm going to place it along that line, having this edge on the placement line. Pin all the way down. For the corners, we're going to miter them, fold it in. And there will be a little bit of a gap here, right there. Now you can just fold this in if you want to. That might cause a bit of bulk though. So what you can do is you can press a crease in that trim and then fold it back out and then mark where that crease is. So it'll be a diagonal crease. I'm going to sew from this corner and end right here, and that will create a mitered corner. For the center back, it has a little bit of a point here. Find that point, press that together, and then follow that line all the way to the edge. And there you go. Stitch it along each edge, and if you're adventurous like me, I am using trim with sequins and embellishments on it. Go ahead and use a zipper foot to get to that edge. Once that trim is all sewn on, I'm going to take the back and you're going to place it right sides together in the center back seam all the way down to the large dot. So on the pattern, it is this large dot right here. Not this one at the top that we followed for the trim, but this one down here. Matching notches. Match up this trim as close as possible. Match up that large dot. And that's where we're gonna stop stitching. Stitch from the top here all the way down to that large dot. Okay, she is all sewn in the back and there is an opening at the large dot here. And I pressed it open up till that point. Pin the shoulders right sides together, front to back and front to back. Pin and stitch each seam and then press it open. The shoulder seams are sewn and good to go. Next thing you'll do is you will sew the lining just as you did the fabric layer, and I've added a hole in the middle, so a break in the seam. I've also stitched it to that large dot, just so when we're done stitching and need to pull it out, we have an easy access. Next, go ahead and flip the fabric layer right side up. I don't have a whole ton of space to work with. The lining right sides down on top of the fabric layer. I'm going to start by matching the shoulder seams, and then we will match up and pin all of the raw edges together. So back to back and front to front, and then pin all around all of the raw edges on the outside. I used most of my pins actually for this. We're going to sew it all around 5/8 of an inch, and for the center back here at this point, let me zoom in to show you. When you sew this back point, sew up here and then fold over the top and bottom seam like this so it's out of the way. Back stitch, break this stitch, and then you're going to repeat that on the other side and flip the raw edges over this way, and then start here and go all the way down and continue. That took a minute, but that is now all sewn. You will next trim the corners, and if you want, you can trim down the seams themselves as well. Clip into the seam for the curve and for the neckline as well. Any other curves that you see around so we can press it nicely. And then after you do that, flip it inside out through the opening on the lining that you created earlier. It may take some patience with the shoulder here, but it'll work out, I promise. Now once that is flipped inside out, go ahead and use something like a chopstick, anything that can poke out the corners, and then also press it down. And then for the inside here, go ahead and slip stitch this opening closed after you've pressed it. Now, if you haven't already, mark where the grommet placements are on the front, the side front, and the side back. Now go ahead and insert the grommets however you'd like. I'm going to use this grommet machine. We are pretty much done with the tabard. Good job, yay! The last step that we need to do is to lace up the cording. I have a 90-inch length cording for the center front, and for the sides, each are 82 inches. You just start at the top and then you lace it down. Next, we're working on the detached hood. Start with the hood pattern, which is pattern number 22. Right sides together, pin all the way around this curved outside. Stitch that down from here all the way over to here. And then we're going to finish the seam by doing a flat felled seam like we did with the shoulder on the blouse. So refer to finishing the shoulder of the blouse for this. That curved part of the hood is finished. So now on the straight edge, let me show you what straight edge I'm talking about. On this straight edge right here, add a 5/8 inch narrow hem. Fold it up 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to take that raw edge and fold it in to that pressed inner edge and stitch close to the edge. Now this straight edge is finished, and I have this marking from the pattern for the trim placement. So this was put on prior, and just like we did with the tabard, we are going to take out our trim of choice and place it like that right next to that placement line. Pin it, stitch along the edges of it. So I also added 2 gathering stitches here along the bottom of the hood, and I added one at 1/4 of an inch and one at 1/2 of an inch. And for now we're going to set this aside, and then we will bring out number 20 and number 21, the yoke back and the yoke side front, and sew the shoulder seams right sides together. So we're going to place this here, matching notches on the other side too. Now sew these 2 shoulder seams and press them open. Those shoulder seams are sewn, and oh, I forgot to mention, but I already have fused the interfacing to the back of this fabric layer, and then it'll be easier if I show you on this side. I added a stay stitching along the neckline, so this is the side front pieces. So I stay stitched from the middle to this side and from the middle to this side. And now we're going to attach the hood. Now along where we just stay stitched, take the hood and right sides together, find the center seam and the center back and place them together, and then gather the hood if you haven't yet already. And to show you what's going on here, we're going to place the dot that you marked here at the side seam, and then this dot right here, which is now the edge of your hood, right at the large dot here on the pattern. So it's basically going to end at that large dot. So we're going to pin it up there, and then adjust your gathers accordingly. Baste it down from here all the way over to here. Bring out pattern number 19, which is the yoke front. Add a stay stitching from up here all the way down this inner curved part. And we're going to pin it to the hood and the other yoke pieces. And I already have one side pinned on right here. So with the hood wrong side facing up and with the outward curve facing here, find those dots again. There is a dot up here that is going to match to the shoulder seam, and then there is a dot down here, the larger dot, which is going to match up with this large dot that we lined up the hood edge to. And then you will line it up with the edge here and pin it. Once you have those pinned, stitch from the top here all the way to the bottom edge. Aw, he looks just like a little guy, like a little head and arms and legs. After these seams are sewn, press the seam of it towards the yoke front. Set that aside for now and bring out number 23, which is the collar. And this has a lining and the fabric layer and interfacing, which I've already fused to it. Place those right sides together, matching the centers. There we go. And pinning from this side all the way around the little curve rainbow thing to this side. Stitch from this end over here around the curve, around the top, and around the other curve here, 3/8 of an inch, not 5/8 of an inch this time. Now that I have trimmed and clipped the curves, I'm gonna flip it inside out. And then on the lining side, I'm gonna add some understitching as far as I can go because it is hard to reach this curve here with the seam towards the lining. Take this to the ironing board and press it. After pressing, I am also going to add a basting stitch at the bottom. All right, we're bringing our little guy back out. Flip this over like this so the front yoke is pointing towards you. Well, pointing towards you, not me. And then I have the collar ready to go here, and I'm gonna place right side down with this facing up, match the center seam and pin it. Oh, and before I fully pin it, I trimmed right here at a 45-degree angle just to reduce bulk, and on this side too, but not right here quite yet. Pin the edge of this collar at this large dot right here. Pin the smaller dot to the shoulder seam. If you need to clip slightly into the seam, you can. But just reiterating, we're pinning all the way from here on out to here. Now once you've got that pinned, go ahead and baste from this point all the way over to the other point of the collar. We're bringing out pattern number 24, which is the flange or the little sleeve cap. Start off by obviously fusing the interfacing to the fabric layer. Right side up and match it with the right side of the lining and place it, and then pin it along the curve of that rainbow. Stitch from here all the way over to here, 3/8 of an inch, so that you get this, and go ahead and trim and clip it so that you can flip it right side out, and then you can understitch it starting from here, going all the way down on the lining layer with the seam pressed towards the lining layer. And then after you've done that, you press it and then add a basting stitch at the bottom to stitch the lining and fabric layer together completely. I present to you the flange or the sleeve cap, and it looks like it's ready to go, and we have basted down the raw edges here so that it is in place. Now we're going to take out our little guy again, find our shoulder seam, which is right here, and I've already added the dots to know where the placement will be, and the dot in the about the center right here is where it'll be attached to the shoulder seam. So I'm going to match that up really quick and then match up the larger dots with the large dots on the detached hood. Awesome, and then you will baste from here all the way over to here and repeat that on the other side. Next, we're going to pull out the lining of these two patterns, and I went ahead and stay stitched along this curve of the side front. Bring out the front of the yoke, the lining layer, and right sides together, pin the front yoke to the side front yoke. If you need to clip into this seam a little bit, you are more than welcome to. Just don't go more than like a half or 5/8 of an inch. And that's what it looks like all pinned. I clipped a lot into the side front yoke, but that just allows it to lay flatter, and so I can go ahead and stitch that. And once I do, it'll turn out to be something like this, and I've already pressed it as well. Bring out the yoke back, place the shoulder seams together, right sides together, matching notches, and then I'm going to pin it and stitch it across and then press it open. And do that on the other side too. The lining is pretty much good to go. I added stay stitching like we did with the fabric layer, where I started from the center back to this side and another one to the other side. Now this part's going to be a little bit confusing, but bear with me. And also the illustration on the pattern will definitely help with this one. So we're going to pull out our main body with the neckline here, condense the hood as much as I can right now. Gonna flip the collar back too as much as possible. Yeah, I'm just gonna pin it. And now we're gonna place the lining right sides together on top of it Oh, this looks difficult, but I've done it before, so I know it's possible. And now we're just gonna start pinning all the way around. I'm gonna start with lining up the center back with the center back and the back neckline with the back neckline. So much fun. Okay, whew, that took some time. So it looks very messy, but let me explain to you what you're going to do next. The instructions on the patterns for number 28 actually explain this really well right here, and they do give a very good visual, probably a better visual than I can provide because this just looks like a mess. I'll show you where I'm gonna stitch. I'm going to leave an opening in the center back here, the lower center back. And then I'm going to stitch all the way down here to the end, all the way down here to the end. Now for the armholes, I'm going to start stitching about 2.5 inches away from this end right here. So I'll start right here. I'll go all the way up and also end about 2.5 inches before this point. And you're going to repeat that on the other armhole right here. And then for the front, I'm going to start stitching right here, go all the way around, pivot around the neck. Bart has a lot to say right now. And then back here, around here, and then over here. So these edges right here are kept free and open. Again, number 28 on the pattern instructions shows this a lot better than I can. Okay, that was a lot of sewing. On the seams that we have sewn, we are going to trim, clip the corners, clip the curves, but leave the areas that we have not sewn yet alone. And then once we've done that, we're going to pull all of it out through the back opening that we left there, and then we'll press. And then we'll slip stitch this back opening closed. Oh man, that was a lot of pressing. But now this is what it's looking like, and I've slip stitched the back closed here. And the next step, we are almost done, I promise. Take the ends at the armholes, place it right sides together. Stay with me here. Because we left that opening, we are able to line it up along the shorter end, matching the middle seam right here. And then continuing on to the lining, matching the notches. And then go ahead and stitch across this. So then what it turns into is something like this. And then you can flip it inside and ta-da, it's a finished seam almost. You will then have to press and slip stitch this top closed, but then you will have a finished armhole. Now for the last step to finish this, I have a frog closure, and I'm going to line up the center right here with the collar. Place it down about in the center, make sure it's flush, pin it, and now I can undo it and hand sew it. And there you have it. That is a finished detached hood.